I used to think that if I made better artwork or posted more consistently, my creative business would naturally grow. I thought that growth would be this steady upward thing, more orders, more momentum, more confidence, but instead what I got was inconsistent sales, busy weeks followed by quiet ones, and long stretches of creating, posting, sharing, and then wondering why nothing seemed to stick unless I was constantly online. That was exactly where I found myself a few years in. I was trying everything, watching other creatives grow, and thinking to myself, what am I missing? In this video, I want to walk you through what actually helped me grow my creative business, not as an overnight success, but in a way that became sustainable over time. So I'm sharing the shifts that mattered, what I stopped doing and what I focused on instead, so that you can take these lessons and apply them to your creative business. If you're watching this, chances are you're not starting from zero, which means that you've already done the scary part of putting yourself out there. You've likely had some sales and you've had people find your work and love it, and you don't have to beg people to buy from you. So you've likely had that moment where you've thought, this could actually work. Like, this could actually become something legit. But right now, it just feels heavy. You know it's possible, but you also know how unpredictable it can be. Sales can feel unpredictable because they spike when you're actively showing up and posting and emailing and talking about your work, and then they go quiet the moment you step back or take a break or just need some time to breathe. And that is exhausting because you can't be switched on all of the time. You've got a life outside your business. You might have kids or a job or just other things going on that means you can't constantly feed that algorithm. So when I first started my art business, this stage felt overwhelming because I had too many ideas bouncing around in my head and no clear sense of where to focus my limited time and energy. So I was constantly chasing the next thing, whether that was the next product I should be making or the next platform I should be on, or maybe the next strategy I should try. And I was convinced that this one thing would be the thing that finally made it all click into place and start working consistently. I also felt really confused by comparison because I would watch other creatives do something and it would work brilliantly for them, and I'd try the same thing and it would just fall flat. So Patreon is a good example of this for me because it actually grew really well at one point and I had around 100 paying members, which I was so proud of and I still am, but I kept measuring it against creators who were hitting these 5-figure months with their memberships. And instead of asking myself whether Patreon actually fit my life and my capacity and what I actually wanted to be doing, I tried to copy what they were doing and push myself to match their results. And that's when it started to feel draining rather than exciting. So this phase of your business is about deciding what actually deserves your energy and where to put your focus, because you can try and do everything and be on every platform. You can make every type of product and try every strategy, but doing everything will burn you out faster than anything else. And before we talk about systems or platforms or any of that, there's one mindset shift that has to happen first, because what helped me wasn't posting more, it was changing how I understood growth in the first place. So let's get into it. For a long time, I thought that the issue was effort. Like, if things weren't growing the way I wanted them to, it must be because I wasn't consistent enough, or I'd ruined my momentum by not showing up perfectly every single day. And I was terrified that any inconsistency would break everything I'd already built. And if I took a week off or posted less frequently, people would forget about me and I'd have to start all over again. But nothing bad happened when I took breaks. What mattered more than perfect consistency was my ability to bounce back and to do it without apologizing profusely for being away. So early on, if I disappeared for a bit for whatever reason, I'd just avoid coming back. Like, I didn't even open the app because out of sight, out of mind. I put so much pressure on myself and I felt like I had to explain or justify why I hadn't been posting. And ironically, that avoidance did far more damage than the break ever did. So people didn't care that I'd taken time off. They were just happy to see me like show up again. And that was a big reframe for me. Understanding that growth isn't about never dropping the ball or being perfect all the time. It's about how confidently you pick it back up when life happens. I've also learned that more isn't always better, even though we're constantly told to do more and be everywhere and post more consistently. But more platforms did not help me grow. It just meant that I was spreading myself too thin and doing everything badly. What helped was research, paying attention to what people were already responding to and what was actually working, and then double down on that instead of constantly chasing something new and shiny. Finally, growth stopped being about hitting certain numbers or getting more followers, and it started being about audience alignment, making sure that the people who were finding me were actually the right people who genuinely wanted what I was offering. So let's talk about what shifted. I think a lot of creatives struggle with the fear of feeling stuck in maker mode. I don't know if this is something that every creator is aware of. We didn't necessarily get into this to be business owners. We got into it because we love making things. But at some point, I had to acknowledge that I couldn't just be a maker anymore. And if I wanted this to grow into something sustainable, I had to step into the role of business owner and not just manufacturer of my products. So early on, I sold these monthly calendars and I remember selling 40 during the launch, which felt amazing at the time. That is, until I had to print every single page myself and then glue them all together by hand. My printer was painfully slow, like ridiculously slow, and each notepad took around 3 hours or more to make from start to finish, which meant I was spending entire days just printing and gluing and cutting when what I actually wanted to be doing was creating new artwork. And I remember sitting there late one night in my studio with glue all over my hands and thinking, I wanted to be an illustrator. I didn't sign up to be a print house or a manufacturing company. And that is when I decided to start getting them manufactured properly, which was scary because it meant investing like money up front, but it freed up my time. And that time mattered far more than the satisfaction of doing everything myself or having slightly higher profit margins that I got from making them at home. That was also when I stepped into another role that I hadn't really planned for, which was content creator, learning to film and edit, and then most importantly, what I think a lot of creatives don't necessarily do is review my own work. Not harshly, but just in a constructive way to help me improve and get better over time. So if you're exhausted right now and feeling like you're drowning in all the things that you're trying to do, this might not be your lack of discipline or consistency. It might just be that you're working in the wrong role. You're trying to do everything. You're trying to be the maker, the business owner, the marketer, the content creator, and the customer service person. And something has to give because you can't do all of those roles well at the same time. So for me, it was the manufacturing. For you, that might not be the thing that has to give, but something does. And you need to figure out how that would look for you and your creative business. If your effort is going into the wrong places, no amount of discipline or hard work or hustle is going to fix that. So next, I want to help you work out where your effort actually belongs, which platforms are worth your time, and which ones are draining it. not all platforms are equal. And this is something that I wish someone had told me earlier, although if they did tell me earlier, I wish I'd listened because I spent so much time trying to be everywhere and do everything. Some platforms compound over time, meaning that the work you put in today continues to bring value for months or even years from now. And then some platforms just expire immediately and your content disappears into the void within a couple of days. And at some point, you have to stop asking, where should I be showing up? And start asking a more useful question, which is, where does my effort keep working even when I step away? And that answer is not universal. It really depends on your capacity, your season of life, and what you actually need your business to do for you, not what looks good on paper. So Instagram is great for community and connection. It's where relationships deepen, and I personally love chatting with people in the DMs to build those like genuine connections. You can't really get that on other platforms, I don't think. Maybe on Threads, but I'm not really active there. But Instagram's not really where sales can be running in the background because the content just doesn't get rediscovered in the same way. Instagram is great for real-time connection, for sharing product drops, updating your audience and optimizing posts to convert when people are already paying attention. But if you want sales coming in without you constantly posting, then Instagram isn't the place to build that. YouTube is different, and this is where I started to see the real power of compounding content. Over on my main channel, Fizz and Flourish, I have videos from 3 years ago that still get views every single day. They still bring people into my world, onto my mailing list, and they introduce them to what I do, which allows them to still support my business without me having to do anything extra. That is compounding, and that is when it finally clicked for me. So when you're trying to decide where your effort belongs, it's not about picking the trendiest platform, and I'm not saying you have to do YouTube. That just worked for me. There are plenty of evergreen platforms that you can utilize, and you just have to work out what fits for you and what you actually enjoy doing. It's about noticing which places reward your depth over your frequency, which ones keep sending people back without needing that constant input, and which ones demand more and more from you just to stay visible. And don't get me wrong with YouTube, yes, there are compounding videos, but it takes a lot of work to get to that stage. So if you are thinking about starting a YouTube channel, you really have to be committed to staying consistent and putting the work in. But that hard work can really pay off. When I understood that, I had to think really hard about my capacity. I am a mum of 3 small humans, including twins, and I don't have endless hours in the day to be creating content for 7 different platforms. So recently, I made a scary but intentional decision to start a brand new YouTube channel, even though I already had 57,000 subscribers on my art channel that I'd been building for the past few years. Now, why would I do that when I'd already built that audience? And it's because that channel was categorized as art. And every single time I tried to post business content there, it tanked and performed terribly because the audience wasn't there for that and the algorithm didn't know what to do with it. So starting fresh felt really risky, and it felt like I was throwing away everything I'd built, but it also meant alignment. And that meant that my main channel could go back to being about creativity and art just for fun, and my new channel, the Creative Juice Club, the one you are watching right now, could focus specifically on growth, structure, sustainability for creative businesses, which is a subject that I could talk about all day long. When you're feeling overwhelmed by all the platforms and all the places you think you should be showing up, remember, you are just one person, and unless you have a team of people helping you, you cannot do 7 different roles across 7 different platforms and do them really well. So something has to give, and it's better to choose intentionally what you're going to focus on rather than trying to do everything and just burning yourself out in the process. Now, choosing the right platform helps, but it still doesn't solve your real problem that everything only works when you're actively pushing it. Because even on the right platforms, if your business falls apart the moment you step back, it's still fragile. So next, I want to talk about how to build a business that doesn't fall apart when you step away, and the kinds of things that can keep sales and momentum ticking over even when life happens. My capacity dropped almost overnight, and I learned something really important. The only parts of my business that didn't fall apart were the parts that I'd already built to run without me. The first thing that broke after I had my kids was my consistency, and that's because I had zero energy and I kind of lost the joy of it. Everything started to feel like a chore rather than something I actually wanted to be doing. But the systems I'd already built before that happened, those things that I'd set up, held the business together during that season. For example, my evergreen YouTube videos kept working in the background and they were bringing people in, and that visibility naturally supported my digital products, which I didn't need to be there to fulfill orders or ship anything. And at the same time, my email systems were doing their job, welcoming new people, sharing value and building trust without me having to sit down and write something new every week, because it was all automated. And this is the part that I really want you to pay attention to. Not so that you can copy what I did, but so you can look for the equivalent in your own business. For me, this system was creating content around topics that people were already searching for, and then guiding them either towards a product that solved a specific problem or into an email list where I could continue the conversation over time, even when I wasn't showing up. The details of that will look different for everyone, but the principle is the same. Build at least one path in your business where effort today keeps paying off tomorrow, instead of resetting to zero every single time. If email automation isn't your thing, and I think it should be, but if you're not ready for that yet, there are other things you can do to help the streamlineness of your business. For example, if launches are part of your growth plan, but they've always felt chaotic or last minute, then putting a system into place here would be a great way to start applying this to your business. You can just post and hope, but that's not really a strategy. Plus, you'll likely end up burnt out from all the constant decision making. So to get you started with implementing some systems into your creative business, I've made a free pre-launch checklist for this part of your business. It's been so popular that I've totally revamped it. I've added more detail, clearer timelines, and a proper breakdown of what to do and when, so you're not scrambling in the final week of your launch. It's completely free and it walks you through building a launch that feels structured instead of stressful. You can grab it from the description below. It's these small changes that can compound over time and allow your business to run so much smoother and streamlined. So that is what systems do. They don't have to be complicated or require you to be any kind of tech whiz. They're just step-by-step processes that you build once and then they run in the background. So although systems matter, they're not the whole story, because once you've built that foundation through your systems, the next phase of growth isn't about adding more, it's about letting certain things go. And that is much harder to do. So let's dive in. To grow beyond a certain point, I had to stop doing things that once worked really well, but no longer serve me in the same way. So studio vlogs are a perfect example of this, because I loved making them and people loved watching them, and they brought in so much engagement and connection, but they took far too long to film and edit for the actual return I was getting, both in terms of views and in terms of how they were impacting the business. So eventually I had to let them go, even though it felt sad to stop doing something that people enjoyed. I also had to let go of perfection and this idea that everything I put out needed to be polished and perfect and exactly right before I could share it. The truth is that people don't want polished, they want honesty and realness, and someone who's willing to show them the messy bits and the works in progress. Scaling for me meant having fewer offers rather than more, because having too many things confused people and made it harder for them to actually buy anything. Scaling meant accepting slower growth that was more sustainable rather than trying to chase those big spikes that just never lasted. And it meant having a clearer vision about what I was actually trying to build rather than saying yes to everything that came my way. So let's say you've had some wins in your creative business, but what if a lack of sales recently or inconsistent growth has completely knocked your confidence? I'm about to share something I wish I'd understood sooner. Your growth on something like Instagram does not equal your talent as an artist or maker. It equals your talent as a marketer. And I say that because I don't want you to lose confidence in your creative abilities just because social media marketing isn't quite hitting the mark. We didn't start these creative businesses to be social media managers, so don't judge yourself too harshly, because marketing is a whole new skill. It's about understanding a whole different system. What gets pushed, what gets shared, what gets rewarded. It has nothing to do with how good your work is. So you can be this incredible artist and maker and have a tiny audience, and that doesn't mean that your work is less worthy. It just means that you haven't focused on growing that particular channel, and that is a choice, not a failure. Long-term growth comes from trust and people remembering you, coming back to you and feeling confident in what you offer. And when you start building for that, instead of just your next viral post, your business begins to stop feeling so fragile. So if growth feels slower right now than you think it should, I just want you to hear this. You're not behind, you're learning. What you're seeing right now is feedback, and it's showing you where something needs to shift or where there's a skill you haven't fully learned yet. One of the biggest realizations for me was understanding that marketing is a separate skill from being creative. Being good at your art or your craft doesn't automatically mean that you know how to sell it. And that is just part of the process. Like any skill, marketing takes time. You try things, some work, some don't, and that is growth. And something that used to work that isn't anymore, that doesn't mean that you've messed it up. It usually means that you've outgrown that phase, or the marketplace has shifted and now the business needs a different approach. And if you're still unsure of what to focus on next, then this video, 40 Ways Creatives Make Money, is a really helpful way to see the options before you decide. Just click here to watch.